Well, I think a lot of people were asking him to go on television, go on to Twitter, go on to, well, or whatever social media platform was available to him at the time, and open the door and say, stop doing this. I think there were a lot of concerns, of course, that he maybe started this, right, and had said a lot of things in a public venue, and that people would listen to him if he came back out and said something else. Certainly, he had shown the capacity to communicate throughout his entire candidacy and his presidency, and I don't think people asking him to step up and say something was really, to them, out of line or out of character for his behavior.
What do these hearings tell us about Donald Trump's desires to remain in office? And do you think those attitudes remain until today?
Well, I think certainly if you were to ask Donald Trump today if he won the last election, he would still vigorously say yes, and it was rigged or it was stolen. So, and I think if you ask hardcore Trump supporters, they're going to say the same thing. And so I think there was a real conviction in his mind that he didn't need to leave office, that he shouldn't leave office, and that people were pushing him out, possibly breaking laws, certainly breaking some sort of moral or ethical code in his mind. So that's certain that he wanted to stay. I think what these hearings have shown is the magnitude of that desire, right? And a lot of these accusations of behaviors of lurching at people, lurching at steering wheels and moving vehicles, throwing plates and other sort of things. But ultimately, this comes down to, did he have the ability to stand up and say, stop what you're doing? Or did he have the ability to call in more police forces, more National Guard, and other forms of security? Those types of things also weren't being done.
There was also testimony about how members of Mike Pence's security detail, as he was sheltering from rioters, were making personal calls to their families.
Well, we have to remember that weapons and guns made their way into the building, right? So these images don't necessarily always show the details of those things. But we had police officers picking up weapons, including guns, off of the ground that had been dropped. We had people, with these weapons pointed at people, at police officers inside the building. And I think that while these images are really drastic and show what appear to be, like flashbangs and other sort of flares and fire and these types of things, they're very dramatic images of people moving and scuffling about. We have to remember that there were real weapons that had made their way into this space. So, yeah, people were ducking for cover. People were scared for their safety. And I think for most Americans, these are images that, unfortunately, are reproduced in imaginations of, quote unquote, other places and not on the U.S. Capitol steps and inside the Capitol.
You can understand why staff members were scared and were calling families as if it might be their last call. Tell us what else was revealed about Donald Trump's battle with his security agents who would not let him go to the Capitol.
Yeah, I think that's really where a lot of these questions remain and need to really be asked and investigated further. These types of security decisions up to that day still seem to be in a great veil. I think these hearings have focused a lot, rightfully or wrongfully so, on Donald Trump and his role. But I think that there's a much larger institution of the presidency and of government and of security beyond just one individual person. And so I think there's still a lot of confusion and questions that need to be asked about where were these people? What role did they play in protecting or not protecting individuals? And particularly in relationship to how you handle someone who's in a position of power that is trying to essentially pull rank. Maybe where that rank isn't necessarily, legitimate anymore.
And Robert, how might these hearings affect both Republicans and Democrats in the lead up to midterm elections?
So Democrats and some Republicans have certainly been putting on an amazing show with these productions. I mean, these are high quality productions. They're heavy in visual material. They're heavy in audio, really great audio material, and amazing witness statements. These are going to create media artifacts that are either going to help Democrats, for instance, rally people to the polls in the midterm elections and in the presidential election, or they're going to backfire. right? It depends on how campaign ads use these images, how candidates use these images, and if Donald Trump wants to throw his hat back in the ring, how he's going to use these images. I think, Donald Trump has that platform still of his own persona, of his own personality, and of free media. And you have, another person, Joe Biden, who right now is a little bit down with COVID, and doesn't necessarily have a great approval rating. What are these images going to be used for in his candidacy if he chooses to really kind of go back into the ring for a second term? So these images and these stories, the intentionalities even behind these hearings could go either way, depending on what's going on in the current political climate.
So is this the last public hearing into the Capitol riot? What happens now with all that information that has been gleaned so far?
Well, there's talk of further hearings and discussions starting again in September after this break for Congress. But it's really up to the Justice Department if they feel that they have their own evidence, if they can glean any further evidence from these types of public, this trial in a public setting, right? This isn't a legal proceeding. There are limited rights and responsibilities of members of the committees and those who are running these hearings and what they can and can't do. So it's really up to the Justice Department if they think that they have enough, or if they have really the temperament to go forward and go after Donald Trump. That has been the major question. And I think that as we're seeing kind of this hearing end and maybe other ones coming up, it's really unclear how likely it is that the Justice Department is going to take on Donald Trump, and if they really are able to.
Robert Gutsche, thank you.
Thanks.